What's going on, everyone? Coach Jason here.
Coach Patrick.
This is the Mach 1 method. Today we are talking about sport performance. What are you training for? Why are you training for it? If you're not training for a sport, is it still sport performance training? Patrick, take it away.
All right. So when you think of sports performance training, you're thinking professional athletes, college athletes, football, baseball, basketball, those big primetime sports that you grew up playing. Well, something that we really care about here at Mach 1 Barbell is the game of life. So the different characteristics that you see out on the field, the court, the track, the pool, is going to be strength, endurance, mobility, stability, work capacity, balance and coordination, all the characteristics that you want to also have in your day-to-day life. So can you give me an example of what that looks like?
I think I've always I always go back to grandfather or grandmother and picking up the baby or the toddler. That's considered or can be considered in a lot of ways an athletic endeavor. You need to pick up, you need to carry, you need to chase, you need to play with, all that's tiring. You're gonna experience bouts of an explosive power. Maybe you need to get up quick, chase after them. Chasing after them is another thing. You could say that's an element of power, that's an element of endurance. There's an element of strength. Maybe they're holding something I'm not supposed to.
Exactly.
I'm sure Emmeline is doing some of that lately.
On the daily.
They got that baby grip strength for a reason, and that's a strength element too. So it's I think of those kind of examples as those are if you're not involved in a sport, those are life-bound activities.
Exactly. If we take the everybody's an athlete approach to it, then these day-to-day activities become well prepared through your training. So let's say, grandparents are taking care of the kid. They have to get down on the ground. Can they get back up without holding onto the couch? Do they have the mobility to get into a kneeling or a squatting position? Can they stand up while holding a baby and not risk falling and injuring both of them? Those things at a grand scale, that might look like, winning the Super Bowl if you're playing in the NFL or something, but the same principles still apply. So I think if we take that athlete approach and we can provide that through all levels of fitness, you have well-prepared individuals.
Yeah, and you have a winning program, and that's what I love about what we do here is that sets us apart is it's the how we approach creating the program and how we approach coaching the programs here, and that creates our why.
Absolutely.
And that's what really makes us unique. We're going to do our back squats here, maybe similar to how you might do a back squat anywhere else, but it's why we're doing our back squats here. And I think that curates into, again, the whole piece of the puzzle, not just an element that is randomly being stripped together. And to kind of just take a step back for a second, we talked about athleticism in adulthood or just regular everyday life in terms of kids, but even just for those who don't have kids yet, the balance and stability
stepping
needed.
Off a curb.
I was just about to say the same thing, actually. It's not something you think about doing, but, the most common place to experience an injury is on, an eccentric loaded movement, slowing down, stepping down.
Can you elaborate what eccentric movement is for the folks watching?
For the folks who may not know, an eccentric movement is when the muscles are lengthening, and when you're typically lowering yourself down or slowing down. So, when you're lowering down from a pull-up bar or when you're stepping down off a curb, right? So those are your eccentric moments. And when the muscles that are involved in stabilizing eccentric movements are not strong enough to handle something all of a sudden, that's when an injury happens. And then, training for the sport of life also becomes injury prevention and overall quality of life improvement.
That's kind of why we have those eccentric tempo squats in our Average to Savage program this phase.
Who said that?
It's like we were prepared.
Like we were thinking about it. But yeah, I think that approach, and you know, I don't want to get too ahead because like if you have like whatever else you want to add into this, but you know, it also, you know, talks about like how we approach goal setting here at Mach 1 too. And it's not just like, I want bigger biceps. Bigger biceps are awesome. Everyone should want bigger biceps. But we want bigger biceps and
what can you
else.
do with those bigger biceps?
Exactly. We want to ruin the trope of like, you can't wipe your butt just because you have big biceps. I can wipe my butt and I have big biceps.
We have proof. But
that's on the other channel.
Subscribe to the I've always kind of used the analogy too about like performance related versus aesthetic related training of like, I don't want to be that guy that has 18-inch biceps, but then like, you know, your friend or your grandfather asks you to help move some furniture and it's too heavy and you are like, what's all that muscle for? You know, you're wasting all that. It's all filled with air. Like, I'd rather be known as like the leaner athletic build and then surprise people with my strength. So like, I'm sure you've seen the guy who dresses as a janitor and like goes and like rips deadlifts, you know, like the shock factor of that, because like he's so well conditioned and like he's an anomaly, you know, like that he's so strong for his size and the CNS he has is crazy. But like you can bring that same concept to your everyday life and you apply that to basic fitness. You know, it doesn't have to be machines and treadmills. Learn how to control your body, learn how to absorb those eccentric forces, you know, move multi-direction. That's something that a lot of people don't do. They don't go side to side. They don't rotate in their training. And then when the element of life happens where they have to rotate or move side to side, injury.
I do want to kind of dive deeper into that, but you reminded me before, low key, something I hate when you were talking about like, oh, hey, muscles, come on over here. Like, so obviously, you know, I can't see for shit. So low key, I hate it when I'm like playing specifically cornhole and like I overthrow or underthrow the bag and someone calls me out for be like, oh, those muscles are just for show. I'm like, fucker, if only you knew that I have a handicap.
I've tried.
It's not just the muscles. I can't see.
That's great.
But no, I totally agree. Like that's yet another thing I think sets us apart is, you know, how we approach even just our dynamic warm-up, how we get, you know, our athletes or our members to move in multiple directions. Like we're not just including mobility in our dynamic warm-ups, we're including plyometrics, having people jump side to side, rotationally, we're throwing, we're implementing, you know, basic running and movement mechanic drills, not again, because we're expecting anyone to go to the Olympics tomorrow, but because when you're prepared and you're able to do that, that's what's going to help prevent injuries. And it's like my dad always said growing up, variety is the key to life. And, you know, the more keys you're able to get in life, the more opportunity there is.
Absolutely.
And that, I think having mobility is just another way to earn another key in life. You know, you're not limited by your own physical movement, literally. Like when you're able to take multi-directional movement into account, you're not afraid to, you know, let's just go back to the kids, like chase the kids down the street or step off a curb and worry about twisting and breaking your ankle.
Exactly. I can honestly, I was just pondering it. I can think of 3 different injuries that occurred, or at least that I heard of this week, due to being out of position and an outside force being applied. Unfortunately, like something like a car accident, like you can't control those factors, but like natural instinct, reaching across, twisting during impact, like cars are cars, you know, I'm not going to take that away. You're not going to out-train a vehicle, but could this person have trained rotation to maybe prevent the severity of that?
Maybe.
Potentially, you know, but you know, a lot of people have just reached over their shoulder to grab their seatbelt in a less severe example and been like, my shoulder, my back, or, you know.
You twist and you sneeze and then you're locked up.
Exactly. And then you can't move for a week and you're like, oh no. And it's just like, I can do all these things, but the sneeze took me out. Train your rotation, folks.
Right, exactly. I do want to chime in on something you alluded to before, was just performance related goals, you know, versus aesthetic related goals. And I think, not that it's unimportant to value how you look, because you should take pride in that, obviously, for some reasons or
That's
another.
90% of the reason most people work out.
Right, exactly. And I think what helps ultimately stay consistent is having another goal to layer on top of that. It's like, okay, yes, I want, like, as a guy, I want like a nice proud chest and big arms, right? But if I'm solely focusing on that, and then you're staring at yourself every day in the mirror and you're not like seeing that small little changes that are occurring in training, compound every day, like it can be, I see it all the time. People get discouraged and people get down on themselves because they don't see the results like happening as they are, even though they are happening, and they're just slow and they take time. You need like distraction goals, but those distraction goals are low-key like more important.
I would almost say that like distraction goals, those are the ones that we usually have analytical data to actually follow.
Right.
So when we actually bring in people and we run through their assessments, when we test their vertical jumps, when we do their 5-10-5s, we're collecting data with real lifetime metrics. And when they retest, we can say, hey, you did get faster, you did jump higher, you did improve your mobility, you did improve your strength. And there's absolute concrete proof that they are making progress and seeing results. Where personally, I know like I can manipulate my body weight and my pump and stuff like that in a matter of a half hour if I really had to. Right. So like if I didn't like the way my arms look, I'm going to grab some dumbbells, I'm going to pump them up, I'm going to be satisfied in a half hour. If I need to make weight for a weightlifting competition, like I know I'm a week out, like I'm going to drop 7 pounds if I have to through just, I'm not going to give away the secrets, sign up for Mach nutrition coaching, but like I know how to control my body and manipulate those factors. And when I'm done, I feel skinny, maybe a little bit frail, but like, you can have some water and carbs and salts and just like fill yourself back up with a quick pump, and then you're back to competition ready.
Right.
So like those things, like everyone's their biggest critic, and those things have too much fluctuation to like not be guided by a coach. So I know everyone wants us there with them 24/7, but like it's kind of unrealistic, So we're not there to always make sure like, hey, you got the pat on the back when you're looking in the mirror in the bathroom after you shower, because that's kind of creepy. But like, while you're here, we're going to make sure that we have these conversations. We review your analytical data from your performance, and you're going to be like, you know what, it's working. I'm trusting the process. Like my time here is worth the effort.
Absolutely.
And then you just look back at your before and afters from 6 months ago, and you're like, wow, like I'm shredded, or I got jacked, or I toned up, all those good factors that you primarily wanted, you got by accident by going through your performance goals.
Right. And something else I think is worth talking about too is just the effect training has like day-to-day life. We're kind of going back a little bit, but at different points in time, we're at different stages in life. We're in our early 30s, so we're focusing like career, kids, all that kind of stuff. Whether you're in your 60s, 70s, and you're focusing more on retirement and living life, you're taking up other hobbies. So we kind of talked about like the kid scenario, even just like the day-to-day life scenario. But we have a lot of members here that have other hobbies other than the gym. And I could think of one pair of members who they're doing like dance lessons.
Yeah.
And they've said to me personally, like the training that they do here, whether it's from the endurance, from the mobility, just the strength in general, they've said like
they couldn't do that a year ago.
Right. Their ability to do dance or take the dance lessons either would have been impossible or is extremely enhanced by what they're doing here. So the gym doesn't need to be your whole life, right? But you don't know what you might want to take up, whether it's dance, whether it's golf, whether it's hiking, or whatever other hobby you're going to have in your life. It's always going to help.
I'm wondering if it's the same member we had a conversation with, or if someone else is also taking dance lessons. But like part of that was like the type of dance they're doing is so technical and skillful that they're practicing and they're like really invested. It's kind of competitive in nature for them to just like kind of get in and take these classes.
For sure.
They're like, I'm getting my cardio in and then I'm coming to the gym too. And it's just like, now they're finding fun sources of movement and cardio in a way that they have a foundation. They don't have to train that cardio. They're kind of getting it passively through the activities that they enjoy because their foundation is set. Where meanwhile, like going out there and like making dancing a workout, you're not going to have as much fun because you're going to feel behind, you're going to feel not ready, you're going to twist at your hips or your knees, you might be sore, you're going to be like, this is more than I bit off more than I could chew, essentially.
Right.
So it's a good way to just say, I built my foundation, I'm ready to go out there, I'm ready to perform, and that's an athlete mentality. But we're taking that to the dance floor, the golf course, we're going shopping, pushing a cart, that's a little wobbly, or picking up your kid and putting them in the car seat, and they're wrestling because they just want to roll around and get on their knees. And I'm not speaking from experience right now, but anyway, you play all these different factors, and you're like, you know what, I was prepared, and on to the next chapter.
Right, exactly. And that's, kind of coming back to the original topic of today's podcast, is just like training for the sport of life. So yeah. Anything else you want to add into this?
Let us know your sport of choice, whether that's a life activity, an actual sport that you're on, like a rec league, a school league, travel team, whatever the case is. And then if you want us to break down what movements you experience there and how to improve those, we can get on a call, we can review some programming, or take it from there. So drop it in the comments, and let's learn a little bit more about our viewers.
Absolutely. All right, catch you in the next episode.
Boom.